Hello to everyone who is joining us for our MLH Fellowship Summer 2022 info session. We're going to give it a minute or two to let people trickle into the room. In the meantime, please go ahead and chat in Twitch chat or wherever you're viewing us from. Tell us a little bit about where you're located in the world. We'd love to hear where our audience is. Hello. We got India in the house for sure. Oh, we're real international now. We got Afghanistan in the room. We got Seoul, Korea in the room. This is exciting, everybody. We're going around the globe. This is exciting.
Hello from New York. And the fake lion. Is there a real lion? Is the question. From LA. Very cool.
All right. Well, we are about 3 minutes past the hour here. And we have a lot to cover. We have a packed agenda. So why don't I go ahead and get us started? As folks trickle in, keep saying hello, keep sharing your location. We'd love to hear where people are. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and introduce myself and Jay, so you know who we are and where we are. So hello, everybody. My name is Amanda. I am the head of MLH Fellowship Admissions. Previously, I've done a lot of work in the ed tech space. Most recently, I ran or helped to run the admissions department at a boot camp here in the States called Flatiron School. And just a little bit about me. I am a gigantic Star Wars nerd. Cannot wait for the Kenobi series in about a month now, a little less than a month. So hyped for that. And anyone who knows me knows that I will talk your ears off about my cats because that is what I do. Jay, say a little bit about yourself.
I will, and it's true. She will tell you about her cats all the time. My name's Jay. I'm president of the fellowship. I used to work at General Assembly, overseeing all things for the U.S. delivery engine as it relates to business, and spent some time on the product team too. I am a avid snowboarder. I love yoga, and I am a very bad engineer, but it helps me talk the talk a little bit. So very nice to meet you all, and so excited to have you here.
Excellent. Thanks, Jay. So coming up a little bit later in our session, we are going to be featuring several of our project partners. One of the things that we do here at the fellowship is everyone who is accepted into the program works on a project, and that project is often sponsored by one of our major partners. So in a little while, we're going to invite all of these nice folks to join us on stream, and Jay is going to run a Q&A and a panel discussion. So if you have questions about what kind of projects might you work on as an MLH fellow, or how do companies get involved with the fellowship? What are they hoping for in a fellow? What makes for a successful fellow? These are the folks that you want to be asking. So start queuing up your questions so that we get to them during the panel. In the meantime, though, we're going to cover a little bit more about what the MLH Fellowship is all about. Some of you may be really familiar with it. For some of you, this might be the first time you're hearing about it. So we're going to go through some details. What kind of outcomes can you as a fellow expect? How does the program work? Then we'll get into details about this summer's projects, and we'll close out with some tips on getting into the program if that ultimately ends up being your goal. So for now, I actually want to turn it back to Jay, who does a really fantastic job of telling the history of the fellowship. Where did this program come from? Why did we set it up? Jay, why don't you take it away?
I will. All right. So As you may or may not know, Major League Hacking is the largest student hacking community in the world. If we could jump to the next slide, please, that would be wonderful. There we go. So yeah, we have the largest network of early career technologists, early career developers, and we ran a study and did some analysis, and we found that in the U.S. in particular, one of all three computer science graduates attended an MLH event at one point or another, which is incredible, right? So what do you get when you have a bunch of, or really the community of the next generation of technologists? You get a place where a lot of companies want to be involved. So companies partner with us to reach you. So we have 115,000 annual active community members, run 1,500 events. Our fellowship has grown. By the end of this year, we'll probably have over 1,000 alumni globally. And really interestingly, the story of the fellowship starts at the onset of COVID. So back in 2020, when a lot of our student community came forward and said, hey, my internship was canceled. We wanted to do something about it, and we did. So we partnered with GitHub at the time to launch the first instance of the fellowship. We call it Batch Zero. And at that time, it was really focused on select open source projects from around the world, right? Like Jest and Flask and React, and working with the maintainers from those open source projects to make those projects better. Over time, more and more companies found out about this great thing called the fellowship, and they wanted to work with us. And so what it's become now is this really interesting program where fellows come to the program to get real world production experience, right, and work on open source projects. And partners come to the program because they want project work done, and they ultimately, are looking for it as a means to hire their next, early career engineering talent. And so that's what the fellowship has become. It's a 12-week remote internship alternative where you are learning real production level skills through open source projects. It's 100% remote, really flexible. You'll earn a stipend. We'll go into a bit more detail about that later. One of the things that everybody talks about who is an alumni of the program is the network of people that they've met and that will help them immediately and long term. You build you build a network not just of peers, but of mentors. And depending on your institution, a lot of our fellows are able to earn academic credit for the fellowship themselves. So that's the fellowship. I now am going to turn it back to Amanda to talk a little bit about our fellows and what they've seen coming out of the program. Amanda, over to you.
Here I am. Knew I had to get added back in somehow. So yeah, let's talk about what this program does for our fellows. Why be an MLH fellow? What can you expect out of the experience? And I think the best way to describe and the best way to understand is actually to hear from fellows who have been through the experience themselves, right? So here's an example of an alumna of our program. Her name is Anne. And she calls out a number of different things here that I think are really, really exciting about her experience. She says, after I was a fellow, I was applying for jobs, I was looking for work, and I had 22 interviews in less than 2 months. I think it happened because I put the fellowship and my experience working as a meta fellow on my LinkedIn. So as a fellow, she was able to work with these very exciting companies on some very exciting projects and speak to that in an interview. And ultimately, it got her a job at Chegg, as you can see, as an incoming software engineer. And this is the kind of thing that multiplies across our fellows when you graduate from the program. So as an MLH fellow, you get access to working on all kinds of different projects for many different kinds of companies, large and small, that ultimately builds your experience and makes you that much more of an exciting candidate for the jobs that you're hoping to get. Here are a couple of other stories of our alumni. We've got, I won't read the whole slide to you. You're more than capable of doing that. But we have folks who have accepted positions at Google, at Amazon, at some really exciting startups, people from all different backgrounds and people who, might have been struggling to otherwise tell their story and show what they're capable of. But by participating in the fellowship and getting real world experience on these projects, they were really able to level up their job search and ultimately be successful. I see some questions about the admissions timeline in the chat. We will cover that in a little bit. So we will get to that, I promise. So what is the fellowship? How does it work? How does it get these outcomes for our students? Well, first of all, I want to highlight the fact that the fellowship was just recently awarded the best developer education initiative in this year's DevRel Awards. So our program structure is certainly doing something right. We are helping people to learn and level up. So this is what we're all about. The fellowship itself has 3 tracks that you can apply to. There's an open source track, a software engineering or externship track, and a production engineering track. And the real difference between these tracks is the kinds of projects you're likely to be working on throughout the program. Open source is exactly what it sounds like. You're matched to a real open source project, and you're provided access to technical mentorship and from the maintainers on that project so that you can make many of our fellows make their first major open source contribution in the program. Or this is their first time working with an open source maintainer, for instance, and that's a huge value add in their experience as a learner and a technologist. Externship or software engineering is very similar, except it's more often a closed source project. We ran an externship with GitHub last fall that was very, very exciting. The fellows got to work on closed source GitHub technology, building out the tools that we all as developers use every day. And then we have our production engineering track, which is unique to this. We are running it for this summer. We ran it last summer as well. And this is a partnership that we have currently with Meta to build out talent in the production engineering space. So this particular program is all about both curriculum, learning what production engineering is and how to build a career in production engineering, as well as working on projects that help you build your skills in those spaces. The eligibility requirements are on the screen. You can take a look here. I do want to call out that production engineering, we are specifically looking for university students. All of our other tracks are open to either career changers or folks who are not currently university students. So how does it work? What do we do to get fellows into this program? The way to think about it is before the program starts, we have sort of 2 things happening at the same time. We're working with partners and we're working with fellows. When we're working with partners, they talk to us. Right now we're working. You'll hear from representatives from Meta in a little bit, Solana, G Research. They get in touch with us and they say, we have these projects, we have this work that we want to get done. These are the kinds of fellows we're looking for. So we're looking for folks who have terrific Python experience, or we're looking for folks who specifically have functional programming experience or are interested in learning more about continuous integration and continuous deployment. That's what we're hoping to do this semester. And we say, great, fantastic. We will do our best to find you fellows that meet those criteria. At the same time, me and my team are running an admissions process that collects applications from interested fellows and screens for that particular set of skills. So if Facebook comes to us and says, we would like 100 fellows this summer, all of whom have strong Python experience. Well, fantastic. Then one of the things that we're screening for are fellows that would be a good fit for production engineering with strong Python experience. And then we take those 2 streams of work, what the partners are looking for and what our fellows can do, and we match based on those skills. So if you are someone who has an interest in production engineering, strong Python experience, and meet Facebook or Meta's other requirements, we might say, you know what, you are a great fit for production engineering. If you are instead a JavaScript developer or a Java developer, we might say, you know what, you're not a fit for Facebook, but you might be a fit for some of these other projects, and then we'll match you there. And so that is a process that is ongoing throughout the admission cycle. It's actually happening for our summer semester as we speak. Fellows are completing the admissions process and getting matched to projects. And then the program begins and you get to contribute to those projects. And so once you're matched to projects, you will be grouped together into a pod with other fellows who have the same interests, the same technical skills, and are working on the same project that you're working on. These are small groups of about 4 to 8 fellows in which you are collaborating with folks. You're working with your pod leader and your mentor to get through any sticking points that you've run into. You're asking questions, and you're also, quite frankly, having some fun. As you can see in the slides, we try not to make it just about have you submitted your pull request this week. It's also about, let's find time to have some group activities, get to know each other, network, play games, and really have a good time. We also do support cross-pod events, which is a question I often get in these sessions. Am I really only going to get to meet 4 to 8 other fellows? No, you will absolutely get a chance to meet other folks in the program who may have different skill sets or different interests than you through our cross-pod events. And I think one of the things that's super important and was, powering some of those fellow outcomes that we talked about a little bit ago, is the fact that this is not tutorial level work, right? Like, this isn't you know academic exercises. You're building real software. You're answering real needs with real engineering leaders, who some of whom you'll get to meet in just a couple of minutes. The projects that we accept to the fellowship are scoped by senior engineers or people who are very experienced in the field, and the project scope can run the gamut from doing some discovery work, research and design, implementing new features into software, creating code sample, troubleshooting bugs and solving bugs, redesigning code, really just like soup to nuts what a professional developer does in their day-to-day job. You can see on the slide that you're looking at right now, we have project summaries and really detailed scopes of work that we use to define these projects for our fellows, so that everybody leaves the program able to say, I impacted this particular piece of software in this particular way based on advice and guidance from this particular person, this engineering leader, this mentor, this maintainer, etc. And as I'm alluding to here, we're looking for a couple of things when it comes to these projects. We want them to be sort of interesting and meaty and flexible and the right size for a 12-week internship, essentially. So we're looking for the project that you're matched to will have setup instructions. You'll have very specific issues that you'll be addressing. We want you to be able to pair program with other people, so you're not going to be working on this in a vacuum. You're going to have other people who are working on this with you. Have very specific deliverables, and also can be monitored and watched asynchronously. This is a 12-week program, but a lot of that work is actually done on your own time, and so we don't want you to have to spend a ton of time glued into meetings, or spending hours a day talking to a maintainer or a mentor. We want you to be able to get in there, write code, make changes, add features, and do the things that you're excited to do as an engineer, quite frankly. Cool. So just to give this a little bit more of a just to give you a little more concrete idea of how you'd be spending your time in the program, let's say you're in our open source program. So, and on average, an open source fellow across the entire 12 weeks is going to spend about 40 or so hours in what we call live learning. And so these are sessions where you are actively sitting in a session, learning tips on how to pass a technical interview. We run educational sessions on how to use Git and GitHub. Tons of sessions on like professional skill building, time management, resume building. I ran a session a couple weeks back on behavioral interviews, because as an admissions officer, I do an awful lot of interviewing. Hopefully I have some tips and tricks for our fellows. And just sort of generally building your skill set separate from your building your technology skills, but ultimately helping you to build yourself out as a tech professional. So that's 40 hours across the 12 weeks. The vast majority of the time that you're spending in the program, you are working on your project. This is flexible, unstructured time in which you're contributing to that scoped project that we talked about a minute ago. So most of the time that you're working, you are working on your own time. Fellows choose to do this work in the evenings, on the weekends, in the mornings, in and around their class schedule. So when you're thinking about it as a 12-week program, it's not 12 weeks glued to your computer for 8 hours a day. It's 12 weeks where you are responsible for your own contributions on your own time. And then last but not least, we do try to celebrate the milestones and the successes. So about 20 hours of your time in the program would be dedicated to ceremonies. Meeting times to meet with other fellows. I almost said fellows, which is a little bit silly. One-on-ones with your pod leader, social events, game nights, things like that, and of course graduation, which is the biggest ceremony of all. So this should give you some sense of how your time is structured. The difference here, and the thing I want to call out, is that production engineering is a little bit more curriculum heavy. So if you are interested in the production engineering track, you might find that your 350 hours of project work is slightly more structured so that you can learn all of the ins and outs of how to be a good production engineer, working within databases, the fundamentals of Linux, and things like that. So keep that in mind. And so just to make this even more clear, as a fellow, this is how you'd be spending your day if you were chosen to work on one of our projects. There's a 15-minute stand-up at least once a day where you're meeting with the people who are working on the same project as you, possibly your pod leader, possibly your mentor, just to make sure that you're not blocked on anything and that you're making good progress on the work that you've been asked to do. You may spend some time pair programming then with the people who are working on the project with you, and attend a short live seminar about whatever that day's learning topic is. Here we see it's about learning as an engineer, how to learn quickly in a software engineering role. And then you're spending most of the rest of your time contributing code, contributing work to the project that you are building out. And I see a correction in the chat that I should call out. In the summer program, we will not be doing a daily stand-up. We'll be doing a 3 times a week stand-up. So instead of having to do that every day, you may do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for instance. So even more flexible for your schedule. And as Jay alluded to a little while ago, this is certainly an experience that can take up a lot of your time, and we want you to have the freedom to do this work and feel like you have the space to do so. And so this is a stipended program. Every fellow who goes through the program gets a stipend. The stipend itself is for education expenses that you incur during or in anticipation of the program. Stipend is paid out twice throughout the semester. So if you start with us in our semester that begins in May, you'll very likely get your first stipend payout in mid-July, and the second half of it at the end of the program in August. So I think now I'm going to turn it back over to Jay to get us hyped up for our upcoming panel. We want to talk a little bit about who are these partners? What are these projects that you're likely to be working on? Let's demystify that a little bit. Jay, take it away.
Yeah. So the question we get a lot, and somebody was alluding to this in the chat before, but why do partners work with us? Like, what business problem are they solving? And the truth is it's interesting. It's usually a combination of bettering software and open source projects that they depend on, using our fellows and using the results of the fellowship, the project work, to make the case for hiring these people. So if you look at some of these really great logos that we've been working with now, Meta, for a number of years, we have 2 different work streams active with Meta this summer. And in a moment, you're going to hear from Erin Miller. She's one of the managers of production engineering that's helped us create the program. But we have a Meta production engineering program where we are looking for 110 different production engineering or site reliability fellows this summer. We also have 10 other spots opened for various open source projects within the Meta ecosystem, an open source project. GitHub is a program we ran last fall, TBD if we're going to run it again this fall, but this was a way to really replace their internship. Fellows there were working on closed source projects, internal at GitHub, things like the CLI, things like internet security libraries. So all kinds of different internal tools, again, really important to the team there. AWS is one of our kind of like founding companies we've worked with, if you will. They've been active in almost every batch of the fellowship dating back to 2020. And we have worked on the Amplify library. We've worked on their Python SDK. and they've hired actually 15 fellows out of our program. And Solana is a really exciting company we've teamed up with to help them increase the number of early career technologists they have in their ecosystem. So it's all about getting more people engaged with Web3, using the Solana protocol, and building with Solana using Rust and TypeScript. RBC is another really interesting project. We actually work with a Jupyter Notebook plugin that they depend on as an organization. So our fellows have been bettering that plugin kind of on behalf of the engineering organization there. And they have also hired fellows coming out of our program. So that's just a little bit about who has worked with us to date. Again, in a moment, we're going to have some great folks from our partners this summer. But what's coming up this summer? It's going to be our biggest batch ever. We estimate we'll have about 219 fellows this summer. There's actually 2 summer programs, one for those that have an exam schedule that's more conducive to like a summer break that starts in May and ends in August, and a second summer batch for those whose exam schedule lends itself to working June through September. All 3 tracks will be available. And yeah, in terms of the projects we have, I'm so excited to have these engineers come join us in just a few minutes. But we have projects from Meta, Amazon, GitHub. Memorial Sloan Kettering is a new partner of ours. Royal Bank of Canada. G Research is a financial firm based out of the UK. GitLab is also a new partner. Solana, like we mentioned, and a startup called Bento ML. They're focused on machine learning. There's one other partner we have yet to kind of announce yet, and it's a pretty cool one too. So I'm sure, once we can, we will definitely make that information public and available. And Guy Nacho, they have some really cool projects queued up over at MSK. A really, really dedicated and engaged engineering team. So I am really excited for the fellows that get matched to that project too. So with that, we are going to jump into a panel discussion. We have 2 panelists on the horn right now. I'd like to introduce Caterina and Erin. While we wait for the other panelists, Caterina, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and who you are?
Yes. Do you want to hear more about me or more about the company? Just me?
Oh, we want
to talk about me.
Yeah.
Me. Okay. I am the director of open source community and developer relations with G Research. We have an open source sort of wing arm that's connected and a little separate also from the actual company G Research. And my focus is on growing the community around the open source projects that we support. So most of the open source projects somehow benefit G Research, but a lot of the projects that we also contribute to and sponsor are just in the general open source ecosystem. We want to be good citizens. We want to help maintain the open source ecosystem and provide our expertise and sometimes funding as well. And so that's my role. I get to give away money. I get to help support developers. I get to help grow skills around presentations, improve quiz start guides, a whole variety of things.
I like the giving away money part. That part sounds like a lot of fun. Erin, could you tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I am a manager in production engineering at Meta. And what production engineering is it's really it's kind of our take on SRE. So it's how we keep all of our products and services at Meta, like Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, how we scale those, how we maintain reliability, make sure that, that everything's ready for prime time and production, help debug the problems that come up, which are many technically. Mostly just have a really great time trying to figure out what's going on when you kind of get to look at all this traffic coming in and out and moving stuff around the internet. It's pretty fascinating. So mostly my team focuses on our CDN. So it's a lot of our video and photos that we have in distributed caches all around the world. So lots of exciting opportunities.
And Erin, I've asked you this question before, but for those who aren't familiar with site reliability engineering, what is it and why isn't it taught at more schools?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So SRE, or site reliability engineering, is basically this it's this whole discipline that at Meta we call production engineering, but it's like how do you basically keep services running, and applications and whatever else it is, whatever other products you're building, keep things running and stable in production. And so I think the reason it's really a growing area. Other people call it DevOps. It may have started as DevOps, and the idea that, like, you can't just write code. You have to figure out how to make it work when users start interacting with it. And so, I think really it's not taught in schools because it's relatively new. It uses a lot of the same principles in software engineering, but also there's a lot of operations work. And finally, there's this reliability, scalability, that big piece in terms of how we think about how to keep systems up and running in production.
So it's safe to say that, those admitted to the production engineering track will be learning some pretty critical skills to help keep Meta afloat, digitally speaking.
Yes, exactly. So what I love about the MLH partnership, the fellowship that we offer, is how hands-on it is. And it's really like, these are going to be skills that maybe you don't have the opportunity to learn in school, just because you're learning theory or you're learning how algorithms work. And those things are important too. But like, getting hands-on experience with operating systems and, continuous development and CI/CD and containers and deploying containers in production, what all that means. And so, yes, absolutely, lots of hands-on opportunities, which is what's really cool.
And Jacob is just joining us. Jacob, could you introduce yourself and what you do at Solana Labs?
Yes, so my name is Jacob Creech. I work at Solana Labs as what is known as a developer advocate. So developer advocate's kind of role is where I work alongside other developers that work on top of our product, which is we work on the Solana network. And I figure out what problems that they have, how I can make their lives easier. And then I either build it or work alongside other developers to build those products to make building on Solana even easier.
And Chase, same question over to you. Who are you? What do you do at Solana Labs?
Hey, yeah, I'm Chase, the developer relations lead here at Solana Labs. Work alongside Jacob. Really, we're like, Jacob nailed a few of the things, but also we're really definitely focused on educating developers, developer experience, making their lives easier, and whatever we can to make it easier to kind of get onboarded to Solana and get building.
And Jacob, Chase, like, why should prospective fellows be excited for Web3 and Web3 in the Solana context in particular?
So personally, I think working in Web3 is like really incredible because like it's a new like tech world that is out there. Every day you can find something new to learn. And you'll be working on products in this field that you really are on the ground floor of those products. What will happen is if you're building something in Web3, especially on Solana, you could be the first person ever to build it. And so that includes like building new innovations, building new tools that will bolster the next million devs. Like that sort of things are really cool. And also working Web3, like every product you build, you're immediately connected with the community of users that are using your product. Instead of like building it alone, you can easily build together. It's great in my opinion.
Chase, I'm curious, anything else you'd love to add or append to that?
No, I think Jacob pretty much nailed it right there. I mean, like for me personally, I worked in software development, working on Spring legacy applications for a long time. So when I made my way into Web3 and like this new technology is really the most exciting thing to me. Just working on things that a lot of it's a reinvention of some older things, but like exploring new things is really what kind of gets me excited about it.
Caterina, coming back to G Research, maybe not a name brand that a lot of prospective fellows know in the U.S. Can you tell us a bit about what G Research does and how your team helps the business at G Research?
So G Research is based out of the UK, and it's a quantitative research firm predicting financial movement in the markets. And it's growing. We're opening a branch office in Dallas in this year, so hiring currently in the next few months. And the open source office is only about 2 years old, so it's a newer endeavor, but the recognition was that G Research was using a lot of open source tools and felt a responsibility to actually support those tools and the open source ecosystem in general. So it's not as big as Meta or some of these other, or not as I should say as sexy as Solana and Web3, but has been around. The company, the firm, has been around for quite a while, and our open source efforts now are growing. And it's pretty exciting, actually, to be able to come in and have the resource to support these communities that have been working in open source for quite a long time, but maybe not have had the support. So I think that's what's exciting for fellows that might want to come and work with us, is the opportunity to actually do some good and make an impact with the open source team. And the skills that you learn, our main buckets are machine learning, big data, and security. The skills that you learn in those areas are applicable in a lot of different places as well. So it's a really positive experience that I'd recommend.
I've always maybe naively said like G Research is kind of like the Bloomberg of the UK. Is that a fair kind of analogy to compare it to?
I don't think so, no. But I don't know that I could give you a better analogy. I think our quote is, we are a leading, hang on, let's see, I'll pull it up. A leading quantitative research and technology firm. So we don't even necessarily say that we're in finance, but we are predicting financial movements. So I think it's a little more focused on the tech, the research, and the tech underneath there.
And we just wrapped up what I like to consider one of our most successful projects I've seen with you and your fellow from the spring. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've worked with MLH over the last 4 months?
Yeah, I can speak. So we had 3 different fellows, and I can't speak to the other fellows directly because I wasn't as involved with those projects, but I worked with a fellow who was doing the developer relations component with me on one of our big data projects, which is called Armada. And we recognized that a lot of the quick start guides, a lot of the documentation really needed work. So she came in and she tried to spin up our project based on the quick start guide. She failed, not surprisingly, because that's a lot of times what happens with quick start guides and documentation. She was one of the first people to actually try and tackle it, which was really brave on the one hand, and she had quite a bit of patience. And so she went through, she helped us figure out where we needed to really improve components, where we needed to add information. She wrote up a blog post about improving quick start guides. She made a couple of videos on how to, and it's really been quite helpful to have that component of it really get that kind of eye and improvement. And frankly, it still needs work. It's not done, but it was over 3 months a really impressive push to get even those improvements done, and they're getting integrated now. So.
That's awesome. And the other projects that Caterina was speaking about was work that we did with Apache Ozone and a DevOps OSS library that is escaping me at the moment, but also some really great project work across the board at G Research. Jacob, Chase, it'd be great to hear about some of the projects that you had scoped this past spring. We just wrapped up our same thing, a 12-week program with 15 fellows working across 4 projects at Solana Labs. Can you tell us a bit about how we worked together this spring?
Yes. So this past spring, we were working on 4 separate projects. Namely, the one I was most involved with was kind of just the general Web3. We were working on a library that is used across all projects in the ecosystem. So thousands of developers use this library. And we were able to make some pretty good updates to the library for the user experience. And especially some of the updates are still going on, and they're making huge impacts on like developers across the ecosystem. Not only that, we also created like a base application so that anybody can use. It's like a scaffolding tool. So anybody can use that's coming on Solana that can easily integrate and build new applications instead of having to figure out how do I reinvent the wheel every time. So those are some of the things I worked on with the fellows.
And Erin, I know that the production engineering track is a little bit different from the open source track, but can you talk about the projects that we are scoping for the production engineering fellows this summer?
Sure, absolutely. So I think, the goal of our fellowship is basically to provide a training program in production engineering or site reliability engineering, which is something that we, like we talked about, there aren't really formal programs right now in schools. And so we partnered as well with the Linux Foundation to to use some of that material so that students will fellows will get the opportunity to really be hands-on with Linux, hands-on with scripting, learning about Docker and how containers work, learning about CI/CD and using using Git to showcase your repository. And basically, as all that's going on, there's sort of coursework curriculum, but there's also the hands-on building the project. So building your own application with your team of fellows and being able to kind of learn learn the process of being a developer as part of a team, and at the same time that you're getting to learn about all of these technologies that are incredibly useful no matter where you want to go with your career.
And Jacob, Chase, I spent about a half hour this morning with one of the ecosystem companies from Solana scoping out one of their projects. Can you talk a bit about what we have? We have like a whole bunch of projects planned for the Solana Labs kind of project set this summer. Can you talk about some of those projects and why they excite you and why fellows should be excited?
So there, as you said, there's a large amount of projects. There's a lot of, with Solana Labs and Solana in general, this summer the fellows will be working alongside the developers of other projects, like very experienced developers on these other projects, building very large applications. Like, let's give an example that I'm rather excited about is there's Solana FM, which is kind of like a giant analytics part for Solana. And to give you an idea of how much data that is being put out, it's about 8 gigabytes every minute or so. And in total, there's something like 50 terabytes unpacked or packed, basically. So they'll be able to work on like that sort of project. Or there's also Solana Pay, where you can build like a point of sale system and how to manage taxes on the back end. Like, it's more of a traditional like application, but you're utilizing Web3 technologies.
A couple of things to add to that. I think one that's probably going to be really exciting to a lot of people, it would be the Metaplex one, which is going to be focused on like mostly NFTs, which I think the majority of people on this call probably know about NFTs at this point. So some really cool stuff happening in that space. So that is definitely a very exciting track for a lot of people, I believe. So yeah.
And Caterina, giving the people what they want to hear about the G Research projects this summer. Can you tell us a bit about, what you have planned and what you know about some of the other projects across G Research?
I think all of the areas that we had fellows coming in for the previous cohort, we're going to continue. Developer relations, it's the main areas, like I said, big data, machine learning, and security. So in the developer relations realm, it's going to be more of the same, working on improving documentation, really improving access to a lot of the tools that we have, and trying to entice more contributors and users to our projects. Yeah, there's definitely more DevOps kind of stuff going on, like what you mentioned in Apache Ozone, with some of those other projects as well. So come check it out. My compatriot Alex wasn't able to make the call. He's under the weather, so apologies. But he could speak more to that. If you have specific questions, we can come in and answer it directly then.
Awesome. Erin, I'm going to kind of leave you with the last question, a bit unscripted, if you will. You know, we talk a little bit about, you know, successful production engineer graduates will be invited to apply for internships at Meta. Can you talk about how awesome that opportunity is and, yeah, how you would, I guess, sell it to somebody who's on the fence?
Absolutely. So yeah, that's the goal of our fellowship is to help you prepare so that you could apply for an internship and hopefully be accepted at Meta. And so the production engineering internship projects that we have folks working on, they're absolutely working on pieces of applications that are in production. So like, you know, I've worked with interns who last summer we had an intern who rebuilt a whole part of our test infrastructure and basically is sort of like the last line of defense before our code goes out and is deployed to 3 billion users, right? So being able to have that kind of opportunity, that kind of like scope and reach, and also the support from the Meta team, right? So, you know, all of the teams that I work with they're so happy to just to get to know our fellows and our students, and we have like a whole bunch of mentors that we work with who are from Meta, who will be there to help coach you through things, you know, how to interview at tech companies, how to get through the, you know, the whole process of landing an internship, and then, you know, you just have the opportunity to do great work. And so it's just a really great chance to get to prove yourself and learn more about what the company's all about.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you all so much for your time. It is always fun to talk shop and be able to preview the great stuff we have planned this summer. So Caterina, Chase, Erin, Jacob, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'm going to turn it back over to Amanda to close us out on how to put forth your best admission application. Amanda, over to you.
I'm back, everyone. I'm back, and I'm keeping a close eye on the chat because there's been a ton of questions about how admissions works and what's been going on. I know my teammate has been dropping answers in there, but hopefully in these last 10 minutes or so, I can answer a bunch of questions and really give everyone a chance to put their best foot forward. So one thing that I really want to highlight in the admissions process, and we mentioned this in the chat a couple minutes ago. This is a very in-demand program. We are lucky to say that this is a very in-demand program. So as of right now, we have received, I should say, over 2,000, almost 2,400 applications for our summer semester. And as Jay mentioned a couple minutes ago, we're looking at about 219 fellows for the summer, give or take. So you can imagine over 2,400 applications for 217 seats. At best, it's a 10% acceptance rate. So how do you make yourself part of those 10%? How do you increase your chances that you'll be part of that 10%? Well, it starts with understanding the admissions process. So the way it works is you apply by filling out an application on our website. That application is reviewed by our admissions team. Both the written essays that you submit and the code sample that you're asked to submit will be reviewed and screened by our admissions team. If you are selected to move forward based on your application, you'll be invited to a first round interview. That first round interview is not a coding interview. It is just a general getting to know you interview where we hear about your interests, your passions, your expectations for the program, etc. If that goes well, you'll be invited to a technical interview where you'll get to go into more detail about the projects that you've built and the kind of technical expertise you have, which then leads to a final decision after that point. And again, that final decision has to do with both how well you do in the admissions process and the projects that we're looking to match fellows to. So you could be the world's greatest I don't know, Fortran programmer, but if we don't have any Fortran projects, you're not likely to get in. So the feedback for someone like that might be something like, hey, you'd probably have a better chance if you learn some Python or if you learn some JavaScript, something like that. But that's the process in a nutshell. Some of these tips have already been discussed in chat, or some of you might be familiar with it, but these are my sort of like top 5 pieces of advice that I give to folks who are thinking about applying. The first is apply as early as you can. At this point, we are already, more than 2/3 of the way through the admissions process for the summer. Folks who are applying now are just going to have a harder time than folks who applied a couple months ago. However, if you think about applying for the fall, right now, you're probably in really great shape because you are going to get in nice and early. So absolutely, like, don't wait, don't sit on your application. Now is always the best time to apply. So please do. And if you are in fact thinking about applying to the summer, please do not wait. We're already about a third of our seats are already spoken for, about a third of those 219. So apply today, please. A second thing, and it's always surprising that this is something that people don't put the effort and attention into. But believe it or not, those essay questions that we ask are really important, and they are, in a lot of ways, your first impression to our admissions team. That's the first thing we will see when we open up your application. We're looking at, what did you write? What did you tell us about yourself? And you can see here up on the screen, we have 2 examples of answers to the same question. The question is there anything else about yourself that you'd like us to know? The first person says, nah. The second person says, I want you to know how passionate I am. I want you to know all the things that I'm learning. I'm so excited to work in technology. I've contributed to this and that. And just based on that, who would you move forward in the admissions process? The person who's so excited to tell us about what they're doing, what they're building, what they're learning, right? So don't just move on to submitting your code sample and think your code sample will speak for itself. Your essays are critical, and we are absolutely looking at them, and we really love to see all of your passion and excitement come out in those essays. Speaking of, showcase the things that you're excited about. I saw I saw some folks in the chat that were like, oh, I'm really excited to work with Solana. Or, oh, the G research stuff sounds really cool. Don't be shy about telling us that. If there's something you're really amped about, give us that information in your application. Here's an example of a fellow who applied for our spring semester, really wanted to work in Web3, really wanted to work in Solana, and went ahead and submitted a code sample based in Solana. It's like, I'm calling this a Solana wedding registry. It's built in the Solana ecosystem. It's built into the blockchain, et cetera, right? And this immediately got my attention as the head of admissions. This person ultimately successfully made it through the process and is working with Solana as we speak, very likely. And that is at least in part because this person was able to showcase what they were super excited about. So for those of you who were chatting a minute ago about like, oh, I'm really interested in this project or that project, how can I let MLH know that? Show us in your application, or if you've already applied, hit us in that email address that we've dropped in the chat, and let us know what you're most excited about. It really does help us to know, and we really do want to make matches that are sort of mutually beneficial, right? If you're not interested in, working on a web dev project, but you're really interested in working on a blockchain project, that's very helpful for us to know. So tell us these things. And this is a big one too. If at first you don't succeed, really don't be shy about trying again. In a world where we're getting, 2,500 applications for 220 seats, give or take, most people are going to get rejected at least once. That is often has nothing to do with you and everything to do with the fact that we only have so many seats in the program and we can only choose so many names. And somebody maybe applied a little bit earlier than you did or had a more specific code sample than you did. It might not have anything to do with your skills and just everything to do with the nature of programs like this. So don't be shy about trying again. And I love this statistic because I think it's incredibly important for people to hear. Of our most recent semester, our spring semester, which just graduated, 47%, pretty much half of our fellows, had applied to a previous semester and had been rejected, including the guy a slide ago who built the Solana wedding registry. And so that person said to himself, you know what? I got rejected. Let me try again, and let me really focus on what I'm most excited about, because that will showcase my skills and really get me noticed. And lo and behold, it did. So even if you have been rejected before, do not take it as any comment on your abilities. It might just be that we didn't have the project match, or we didn't have the seats available for you at that time. That doesn't mean we don't this time. So applications are still open for a little while for the spring. Applications are already open for the fall. And last but not least, if you don't have time this summer for the full program, or you've already gotten your application in, or it's too late for you to apply, consider applying to MLH Prep. Some of you have been talking about Prep in the chat. I saw it come up a couple of times. Prep is a 3-week free introductory course that we offer a couple times throughout the year. We're offering a start date in July as well as August. And it's essentially a bite-sized version of the fellowship. Everything that we said about the structure of the day and the kinds of things that you're working on remains true. It's just a little bit of a lighter lift and a little bit less of a time commitment. And essentially, it's a way for you to show MLH what you're capable of and get your foot in the door for the full fellowship. When I most recently ran an analysis of it, fellows who had completed MLH Prep, if they applied to the main fellowship, were 14 times more likely to get accepted than those who apply without it. So this is one of the best ways. If you're eyeing the fall semester, you're like, what are the things that I can do to really maximize my chances of getting in the fall? Apply for our summer semesters of prep. And that'll be one of the best things that you can do for yourself. So what happens next? A couple of you were asking about timeline, and a couple of you were asking about last days to apply. I want to call out a couple of things on this side. First of all, here we are with our April info session. Also, we have a couple of different last days to apply. We have already passed the last date if you are an APAC candidate. So if you are in APAC, if you are in India, Pakistan, I think I saw Malaysia or a couple of other places in the chat earlier. Your best bet at this point is to apply for summer prep or to apply for our fall semester. We do still have a couple of seats available in our North America and European contingent, South America and Africa as well. So if you are in those locations, your estimated last day to apply is the 23rd of May, which is less than a month from now. So please get your applications in. And then if you are located in Europe or the UK, we've opened up a specific summer 2 start date for you on the 20th of June. Your last day to apply will be June 13th. So I know this is a lot. We'll send these slides out. We'll send these dates out via email after this event is over. If you want to screenshot it, that's probably not a terrible idea. But here's what's up for us for the rest of the summer. The next time we run one of these info sessions, we will probably have our summer semester full, and we'll mostly be talking about the fall at that point. So hit up our website, find us. Hang on, let me get that. We'll drop that link to the website in the chat again. I think I got to most people's questions. For those of you who are asking about hearing about acceptance, we are getting acceptances out on a rolling basis for the summer semester right now. So if you've applied recently, you should be hearing about acceptances. Once you're done with the admissions process, it usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks for us to make a project match for you and get back to you on those details. All right, and I think I brought us in right on time. We are 1 minute from the top of the hour here. So thank you all so much for joining us for this info session. It's always a lot of fun to talk about the program and see the energy in the chat. Thank you all for coming. You will hear from us in the coming days, following up, as I said, with the slides and some key dates. And if you are thinking of applying for summer fellowship, for fall fellowship, or for the upcoming prep dates, now is definitely the time. Jump on those applications, and I can't wait to read them. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are. Bye.